My name is Randall Gannaway. I'm the author of two books, The Numbers of the Bible, How to Interpret the Mind of God, and The Treasure of the Sakari Gospel. My background is mostly in technology. I wrote a book when I was much younger, decades ago. And it was a good enough book. It had beginning, a middle, and an end. Some interesting parts, and I tried to get it published, and it made it quite a ways. But ultimately, it was returned, and I just kind of got busy and gave it up. But I've written all my life while I was rising up in the ranks of various companies in the technology field. I have a doctoral degree, a lot of education, and so I've explored many different things. And so writing has always been my passion while I was working my way up the corporate ladder. And I've been writing for decades. When I was younger, a preacher talked once about the symbolism in certain numbers of the Bible. And I found that quite fascinating, being sort of an analytical personality. And so I thought about that and researched that and collected information on that basically my whole life. And then decades ago, there were a lot of books coming out around the sort of a code embedded in the Bible of certain words and phrases meaning certain things. And that comes from the fact that every letter in ancient Hebrew and every letter in Greek is also a number. They use their letters for numbers. And so every word equates to a number. And because of that, those writers of ancient times could embed symbolism in their words very differently than what our words mean today, how words are used today. And so as I was exploring the sort of the numeric symbolism in numbers of the Bible and what each individual number means, I discovered that the numbers build upon each other. It's not just this number means that number means that. It's that one number adds to the previous number and builds and builds and builds to a system. And then I looked at some of the words and phrases and their numerical value. And I asked, would those numerical values, once reduced to their simplest form, equate to the same numbers and the same symbolism? It turns out they did. And so my book, Numbers of the Bible, goes through those symbolisms, that whole system of numbers, how they build upon one another, and then not just the explicit numbers, but also the implicit values in other words and phrases, and equates that together. In my book, The Treasure of the Sakari Gospel, there I had a fascination with the apostles, the 12 apostles, where they'd gone, how they lived, how they had died, and so on. And so I've done a lot of research over the decades of that, with the intent of writing a series of historical novels associated with those apostles. But I was reading a lot of James Patterson novels, the cross novels, and the psychopathic qualities that are built into his villains and so on. And then I was reading Dan Brown novels and the associated research and analytical nature and the clues and the history associated with them. And I was also reading some nonfiction around biblical archaeology, because again, going related to the apostles and discoveries that have been done and so on. And so I shifted and decided to write a current day novel using all that history, the history that I was going to use in a historical novel, as the background, as the depth. So it added an additional dimension to the novel, because now we had essentially as a treasure hunt based on a lost gospel, but with all this history behind it. And so that's sort of inspiration and why I wrote Treasure of the Scarlet Gospel like it is. So there are several books out there about the symbolism of numbers, and the symbol of numbers in the Bible even. And what makes my book different than some of these other books is that I present it as a system. It's not just a symbolism of an individual number, not just a whole lot of different numbers and what they individually mean. It's how the numbers build upon one another within the system. And it's a fairly straightforward, simple system. The first three numbers, 1, 2, 3, are spiritual numbers. One being basically God and the one God. 2 being opposites, good and evil, righteous, unrighteous, so on. 3rd being the Trinity, which is God plus the opposites of flesh and spirit. Those are the spiritual numbers. Then the physical numbers are, you add form to what's before. So you start off with the broadest form of that, and basically the world, number 4. Number 5 is narrowing it down to the physical body. And number 6 is homing in on man as the physical form of man. So you add a soul to the body, you end up with man. Those are physical numbers. Then you get into the numbers of completion. So now you add perfection to man. That gives you number 7. Number 8 is sort of completed evolution. That's completed development of man. And 9 is just the ending. So a basic numerical system is a system, 3 spiritual numbers, 3 physical numbers, and 3 completion numbers. And then you get into all the sub-levels of that, the numbers that reduce down to those numbers, like 12, 144, 666. There's another system of numbers starting with 37. If you look at the numerical value of the word heart in Hebrew, it equals 37. So 37 is the heart of the numerical system. Multiply 37 times 3, the number of the Trinity, you get a 111, which is very much a Trinity type number. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. You multiply that times 6, number of man, you get 666, and so on, 777, 888, 999, and so on. So anyway, there's a whole system of numbers, how they relate, and how it's not just the specific numbers mentioned in the Bible, but the actual words and phrases used in the Bible and how they all relate, which is very different than most books out there that are of similar subjects. Now, my book, The Treasure of the Scarlet Gospel, that book espouses some somewhat controversial theories that some of the biblical archaeologists that are out there might talk about in nonfiction, which is that the early Christian church was not a pacifist type organization. It was militant. It was just conditionally militant. I mean, there were Christians that fought with the Sicarii and the Zealots at Masada. So they were all sort of apocalyptists. They were all waiting for this final battle at the end of the world. It's just that the heart of the early Christian church knew that no battle was going to be successful until Jesus returned to lead it. So they were militant, not peaceful, those early Jewish Christians. And they also weren't poor. They were collecting a lot of money from their followers, and so they were a fairly rich church. And they planned on using that money to fight the war to end all wars. So it takes this view that a handful of biblical archaeologists espouse, and takes one of those biblical archaeologists, turns him into the hero of my book, and then they go on a treasure hunt, which to help prove to find the treasure of this early Christian church and to help prove these sorts of theories. So it's a very different sort of view of this history than what the normal church position would be. Pretty controversial. And so then they go on a journey through various countries and various historical locations to find this treasure, which turns out to be they draw a connection between a lost gospel and the Copper Scroll. The Copper Scroll is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls that was written on copper, etched into copper, and it's very quickly into copper. And it's basically a treasure map, which has 63 different locations of treasure, which today would be worth maybe $15 billion. So and not one item has ever been found of that treasure. So by drawing a connection between the documents, they go on a treasure hunt to find this treasure. So I hope that a lot of you will be buying these books over the coming months and through 2025. The Numbers of the Bible was always meant to be the first book in a series. So my intent would be, as this one is getting out there and being distributed and purchased, to also then follow that up with another book. It's supposed to be an Interpreting the Mind of God series. Obviously, we can't comprehend the mind of God, but we can get glimpses into it, and we get glimpses into it through certain aspects of what's been communicated. So we have the symbolism of the numbers that are used in various scriptures. Now we can also have the symbolism associated with the parables or stories throughout the Bible. And so through this kind of a series, we can get insight into the mind of God. And similarly, on the treasure of the Scary Gospel, it has a lot of elements associated with an action thriller type novel, action thriller type movie. So the intent there is to take this book, potentially even make it into a film and or a series, because it's written very much that way. The Treasure of the Scary Gospel is written in such a way that it translates easily into film. And so our plan is not only to publish and distribute the Treasure of the Scary Gospel, but then also to convert it into film. It has basically, not only does it have the hero and his sidekicks and his love interest, it has a psychopathic killer, it has Palestinian terrorists, it has Jordanian secret police, it has all kinds of elements that translate well into today's world and to an action thriller movie. So the Numbers of the Bible, if it was converted into a film, it would have to be more of a sort of educational documentary or whatever. But the Treasure of the Scary Gospel translates easily into an action thriller film. So in 2025, I would like to see not only this book become a bestseller, these books become a bestseller, it's also translate them into film. When the Treasure of the Scary Gospel is made into a movie, what I'd be mostly concerned about is that we retain some of the more controversial and political features. I wouldn't want to see that some of the elements that might be seen as somewhat political in nature be removed, but such as Palestinian versus the Israelis and so on, or the traditional church sort of position versus new thoughts, new positions. But as it's made into a film, I'd like to keep those sorts of more controversial pieces to it. But again, I'm pretty flexible as long as we retain certain key elements. I'm pretty flexible with any kind of adjustments we want to make to the storyline. Relative to the numbers of the Bible, I think this book, for anybody who has any kind of an analytical nature, who wants to to dive into a deeper relationship, a deeper spiritual relationship, then I think this book has a lot to offer. I think with me, as I dove into these numbers and the symbolism and the commonality of that symbolism, I mean, the Bible has 66 books. And the fact that this symbolism, these numbers were used in the same way through all 66, with all the different authors of these 66 books, can deepen your faith in terms of that the Bible truly is the Word of God. So I think the more you dive in, the more you understand it, and from my own personal experience, then you start seeing how this all ties together, and it can really deepen your faith. So I encourage anyone who is interested in that to buy the book, dive into it, and explore these numbers and their associated symbolism, and to whatever depth you would like to dive into. Relative to the treasure of the Scarlet Gospel, I think the hero here is the way that I would like to be. So I think no one really knows what they're going to do in certain situations until they're in there, in that situation. No one really knows how they're going to face death until they face it. No one's really going to know how they face danger until they're in danger. Are you going to be brave when you face it, or are you going to panic? No one really knows. So this is how I would like to be, I think. And so basically you have a professor who is also an archaeologist and who goes on these adventures and is still humble and relatively mild-mannered, but he puts himself out there and he faces danger, and he keeps cool, keeps calm, and deals with it. And in so doing, and he just faces a clue, interprets a clue, faces another clue, interprets a clue, listens to others, listens to his friends, and he proceeds on towards his objective. And he does so courageously and with insight and with intelligence. And so that's the way I would like to think I would be in those situations. Although, again, that's probably some poetic license to make those kinds of assumptions. Because, again, you don't know until you're there. But anyone who has an interest in sort of first century Christian history, who likes action thriller type novels, who likes books, chapters written from different perspectives, not just from the hero's perspective, but from the villain's perspective, from the terrorist perspective, and so on. I think this is the book for you. So I'd appreciate if you would to buy it and dive in. So with all that, I thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed both books.